Hey everyone, I'm excited to announce that I'll be launching a new podcast, Jungs AI Podcast. The idea behind this podcast is to have real conversations with industry leaders in AI and machine learning, diving into not just the tech, but the bigger picture, innovation, careers, youth development, opportunities, and the impact AI has on our lives. We'll be speaking with experts, founders, and pioneers who are shaping the future. For our very first episode, we'll be interviewing Julien Simon. Stay tuned. He is a visionary leader and respected authority in artificial intelligence and machine learning, currently shaping the future of AI as Chief Evangelist at RC.ai. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Julien has cultivated a reputation for bridging cutting-edge technology with real-world business value, earning him recognition as a trusted voice in the global tech community. His journey includes pivotal roles at industry giants and innovative startups alike. Prior to RC.ai, Julien served as Chief Evangelist at Hugging Face, where he empowered Fortune 1000 companies to harness machine learning solutions, translating complex technologies into actionable strategies. Before that, as Global Technical Evangelist for AI and Machine Learning at AWS, he guided organizations in unlocking the potential of cloud-based AI, simplifying scalability and innovation through his expertise. Julien's leadership extends beyond evangelism. He has held executive roles such as Chief Technology Officer at Viadeo and Aldebaran Robotics, Vice President of Engineering at Criteo and DigiPlug, and co-founder of Netatitude. These experiences honed his ability to lead global teams, drive R&D breakthroughs, and deliver transformative products, from embedded systems to robotics and mobile communications. A passionate advocate for ethical AI, Julien champions accountability and collaboration in the field. His book, Learn Amazon SageMaker, demystifies machine learning for practitioners, reflecting his commitment to democratizing technology. He frequently addresses pressing challenges like algorithmic bias and sustainability, urging the industry to balance innovation with responsibility. With over 200,000 followers, he runs a successful YouTube channel delivering high-quality technical content on AI, machine learning, and deep learning. At his core, Julien remains an engineer with an insatiable curiosity. He thrives on being the voice of the customer, translating feedback into solutions that bridge technical possibilities with human needs. His blend of technical mastery, strategic vision, and principled leadership makes him not just a pioneer in AI, but a compelling storyteller for its potential to shape a better future. Let's begin.
I'm honestly privileged enough to have this conversation with you because I remember the last time we actually engaged was probably 2 years ago when you came to South Africa, when you were at the AWS roadshow, and you had that Hugging Face roadshow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ever since
was
then,
great.
it was amazing.
was
But
great.
how was South Africa for you when you came here?
Well, it wasn't my first time. I actually visited Joburg years and years ago when I was at AWS for an event over there. But it was a really short trip. I think I stayed only for 2 days and honestly didn't see too much. But yeah, this time was nicer because I got to go to Joburg again and to Cape Town. That was my first time in Cape Town.
Nice.
And you keep hearing how beautiful it is, and now I understand. Cape Town. I mean, no offense to Joburg residents, but Cape Town is truly great, and the weather was perfect. And the community, the most important thing for me, of course, is the quality of the interaction with the tech community and the developers, the customers, the enterprise users, etc., and the curiosity that they have for AI in general and open source AI in particular. And there was a lot of that. We did this really good meeting in I think it was Cape Town. And it was a full room and, tons of questions and from students to professionals. And that's all there is for me. That's the reason why I take those long flights. And and it's because I want to help people figure things out. And it was a really, really great trip. The AWS team over there was super nice to me. They babysitted me perfectly,
Wow,
fed
that
me
sounds
great
fantastic.
food, etc., etc. So it was all nice, and I would love to come back, and maybe not just South Africa, but also go check out some other countries in the region. Of course. So
Well,
anybody here wants to invite me, get in touch.
definitely. No, honestly, that's something that we would love to do because honestly, I would say Cape Town has the edge around Johannesburg in terms of startups. They are
Yeah.
more, we can consider them the Silicon Valley of South Africa, but not really. But there's a lot of startups that are based in Cape Town. So that makes a lot of sense. So even though you had your time in South Africa traveling, and at the time you were working for Hugging Face, and
Right.
how was it working for Hugging Face? Because when you started Hugging Face, I mean, I'm assuming that you started when it started Inception, and where it became today, or when you initially left, it became a multi-billion-dollar company, a
Yeah.
unicorn. How was that
Yeah. So
journey for you?
so I joined. So I joined from AWS. I joined in, if I remember correctly, I think it was October 2021. And Hugging Face then was, I mean, of course they were rising. I mean, the company was probably already, I would say, around 40 people or something like that. Still very much focused on of course open source and growing the models, the libraries, etc. But also starting to look at cloud integrations, enterprise projects, etc., which is really my background. God bless open source, but at the end of the day, what really gets me going is when I meet with customers who have real life problems in real life organizations with all the complexity that this entails, from compliance to budgeting to not necessarily having all the skills, everything that makes enterprise IT complex, and still manage to get things done in that framework and create business value, whatever that means to them. Could be healthcare, could be retail, could be financial services, but get some projects in production that really solve problems. That's my thing. And so yeah, Hugging Face was rising, and I think it was a perfect storm, because ChatGPT came out, and I guess it did all the marketing for us. Hey, this is what generative AI can do, right? Um, and then very quickly, within maybe 6 months, we started seeing the first open source generative AI models that show that, hey, there would be an alternative. All the original Llama and Vicuna and all that stuff feels like a century ago already. And then we started seeing even better models like Llama 2 and Mistral and well then Llama 3 and everything else. And so the path to AI was not just, hey, okay, go call OpenAI APIs or Anthropic APIs, but there's an alternative for enterprise use cases, particularly where you want an expert model on a particular use case. You don't want cooking recipes. You don't want astronomy questions. You don't want to write poetry. I mean, there's nothing wrong with all of that, right? But if you're a mobile operator and you have hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of customer support calls every day, chances are those folks will not want to listen to poetry or cooking recipes. They want to understand how to change their subscription, or how to get a new phone, or how to get a new SIM card if they lost it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a narrow slice of human knowledge, but it needs to be a very deep slice.
Mm.
And there's this contradiction where those huge models, they're I keep saying they're a mile wide and sometimes an inch deep, where in a case like this one, you would want an inch wide and a mile deep, knowing everything there is to know about your customer products, your customer subscriptions, etc., etc. So everything there is to know and then that's unlikely to be available in those models. So I think companies started realizing this, mid 20, well, I guess mid 20 or late 2022, early 2023, and that created more incentive for the open source community to go and build cool small language models. And now we're really at a point where you can not just match the larger models, the closed models. You can outperform them, right? And we see that. I mean, we're all looking at the benchmarks, and my current company, RC, is also doing that. Actually, just last night we released another 2 models that are distilled from DeepSeek models, and they're amazingly good for the size. So I think again, this was a perfect storm of riding the AI wave, and quickly, thanks to the community, quickly showing that, hey, there was an alternative. You don't have to go closed LLMs. You can. They're good for certain use cases, but they stop being relevant for others. And then you can use open source models. And I think Hugging Face has been really great at growing the community, being the central place where everybody comes to find those models, and maintaining the libraries, and getting them integrated across clouds, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, yeah, they're important in the tech world today.
Oh, definitely. And I was gonna just mention, because I'm just gonna go back to 2023. You did have a pyramid type of arrangement where you spoke about how important it is having an AI model being trained with your particular data, your own IP.
Yes.
That's where you get true value. So one
Exactly.
thing I picked up, and I mean, within the industry, we understand open source is key. Firstly, the fact that you have your own data, full control on the model itself, so you can have more explainability on it. And obviously, data privacy is primarily the most important factor. So one thing I was going to add to that is, when organizations try to go to the route of fine-tuning models, especially with their own IP, what would you advice would you give them, especially to a point where they don't know what to fine-tune? I think that I've seen that quite a bit with organizations, and I'm sure you've experienced that with clients and customers.
Yeah, so I think the story has evolved over the last maybe the last year or year and a half. So back then, I remember that pyramid slide. It's probably still available somewhere in my YouTube talks. Saying, hey, you need industry data, and then you need you need language data, right? First of all, and then you need industry data, and then you need company data, and then you need use case data. And I think this was I guess a simple way to explain it, and people like that slide a lot. But yeah, you're right. The next step is, okay, now that you realize that, how do you bring your data to the mix? And I think that the first step is really figure out what kind of questions you want the model to answer. And it sounds like a plain, maybe a dumb question, but it is really important, because when you're chatting with a model, it's not just about you want the model to have the right knowledge. Okay. So yes, you need the model to have that fundamental knowledge on your company, your products, your documentation, your procedures, your, customer profiles, whatever. And that's important. But you also need the models to have the right tone of voice and the right level of compliance in the answers. I keep taking the same example. If you build a banking support chatbot, you want the tone to be equivalent to what you would listen to if you actually went to your bank and spoke to an employee. If the chatbot is too familiar or too cold or using arcane financial jargon, that's not working right. The answer could be factually correct, but the tone and is not right. And God forbid, you don't want the chatbot to say anything that could be remotely aggressive or offensive or annoying, right? So you need to find all those properties. Okay, what knowledge am I expecting the model to have? What tone of voice should it have? What what should the answers sound like, etc., etc.
Yes.
And you need to evaluate models. So I would say a year and a half ago, even with a really good model, I would say fine tuning was probably still necessary.
Yeah.
People would do retrieval augmented generation to get the fresh data, etc. But as they found out, as a lot of people found out, retrieval augmented generation does not turn your generalist model into an expert. There is no real domain adaptation with retrieval augmented generation. Yes, you get the fresh data. Yes, you get some of the jargon and vocabulary, but the base knowledge of the model is still what it is. So fine tuning would have been in order. Now I think I've slightly evolved. I think the models are so good now in terms of, and I don't like the word, but reasoning. Let's say step-by-step explanation. The old models they would give you that blob of text, and it's like, okay, sometimes it felt like a quote from a book. You know what I mean? It's like it didn't sound too natural. I think now those models out of the box are good. They've seen enough data for sure. The reinforcement learning technique, the alignment techniques that have been used for to inject the human preference element into the models, those techniques have made so much progress. That is, I feel it is easier to control them now through reasonable prompting.
True. That's true.
So I would advise that you start from off-the-shelf models, right? At least you see, hey, can I get the tone of voice? Can I get the safety? Can I get the feeling that okay, this is a good answer. This I would be comfortable with my customers reading that. Now, on top of that, yes, you will still need retrieval augmented generation for the fresh data. And if there is indeed some fundamental knowledge that the model is lacking, because you need deep subject matter expertise, very specific stuff, and it is not in the model, or you can't get the model to write it in this particular way, then yes, you would do fine tuning. And that would mean basically writing your own Q&A pairs, which is not as simple as it seems. You don't need a ton. You're not talking tens of thousands. I think if you have a few hundreds or a couple of thousand Q&A pairs, just to show the model, like, okay, this is the stuff that I'm after. This is how I'd like you to restitute that question to the user, etc. That's usually a very good improvement. And sometimes, yes, you do need to do additional pre-training. If you work in those bizarre fields like life sciences or etc., where there's so much internal data, so much confidential data, so much jargon that no off-the-shelf model would have seen it. Then, okay, you do need to do additional pre-training, but that's. I would say it's not for everybody. I think the models have gotten better, and long story short, off the shelf, I see better success now than maybe a year ago. So do the simple thing first, as always. Start with the off the shelf model, add RAG. Of course, you want RAG, and then take it from there. Run evaluation, run human preference, and fine tuning and pre-training are. I would say last resort, because they're not as easy as everyone thinks.
No, definitely, and I agree. So you mentioned quite a bit from that words. So you mentioned reasoning, and I think reasoning capability has been probably one of the biggest topics, as you saw with DeepSeek R1 model, and you did mention again with reinforcement learning techniques that you guys use. But I want to now focus around your organization that you work for. So Acree, just trying
RC.
RC.
RC,
the proper name.
RC AI, RC, if you want to be perfectly
AR.
complete, RC AI, yes.
Okay, perfect. So you work as a chief evangelist, and I'm sure many people are wondering what that is.
Oh,
At
yeah.
the same time, they still think. if you don't mind giving a bit of context around that and the company.
Yeah. So
And
yes,
what
it
of-
is. It is a bizarre. It is a bizarre job title, but it's a good conversation starter. To break the ice. Usually, a lot of meetings start with, "Hey, before we go, into the meeting, what do you do really?" So I would say there are different sides to the story. So of course there is developer relations and technical evangelism side to that story, which is at the core of what I was doing at AWS and Hugging Face and today, which is, hey, engineering and R&D, build stuff, and every now and then I take a look, I give it a spin, hopefully before it's released, and I just try to figure out what it does. Okay, so what is this really doing? What can I build with it? How can I explain why we think it's good? What's the value proposition to users? And how could I build a demo or write a blog post or do I don't know, anything really that shows what you can actually build with this, right? So it's not, it's really just me playing with the latest toys that the company builds, and trying to put myself in the shoes of potential users and trying to show them, examples, use cases that I think make sense, and shine I guess a positive light on what we build. So there's always this, and of course you have to be technical, and otherwise it's just a bunch of PowerPoint slides, and some evangelists are more on the business side, and that's okay. They do that well, the strategy and more of the consulting kind of thing, which is not what I do. I go for the hardcore details. I dive deep as I need to, and then I come back to the surface with my findings, and I try to put it in terms that the widest technical audience can understand. So there's this side. Then there's another side, which is more, I would say, customer focused. So engage with, again, potential customers, and double click on their use cases and see how we can help. And again, bring some product expertise and technical expertise to the mix, and at the same time, try to bridge the business problem and the technical angle, the technical expertise, and put it all together. And I really love that part. I know a lot of DevRel people don't want to talk to customers. They don't want to do customer meetings. Like, I've never refused meetings with customers and the sales team, etc. I'm not part of the sales teams. I have nothing to sell. I'm here to help. I'm here to explain. And the fact that I have no skin in the game allows me to say things that potentially, a sales team or an account team couldn't say. And this is super valuable to customers, and they respect that. They understand that, I'm not, I don't have a quota to fill. And if I think we're not doing the right thing here, I'm gonna say it. And maybe there's going to be an interesting conversation with the sales teams later, but I'll deal with it. But I'm on the customer side. And of course there's the partnership angle where we work with AWS and other companies, integrating our models and platforms into their systems. So you can use RC models on Amazon SageMaker. You can use them in Amazon Bedrock. All our platforms and models, or the most recent ones, are available on the AWS Marketplace, etc. So all that stuff is hard work. It's technical work. It's convincing people at AWS to add us to the party, etc., etc. So it's it's a good thing. It's a fun thing, and we're mostly doing AWS at the moment, but we'll certainly work with others too. So
Yes.
It's a mix. It's a mix of all those things. Generally, waving the flag, convincing people that yes, RC models and RC platforms are worth trying, worth considering, and prove it, right? Prove it with demos and code and talks, et cetera, right? So that's what I do. Wave the flag, travel, and talk to people.
Your brand ambassador, you can say. So one thing I was going to say, right, with RC, one thing I picked up is that you guys mainly focus on small language models.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think you did mention earlier on that you also have distilled models as well. So when it comes to distilled models, I'm sure many members also want to know exactly what that means. And my understanding is utilizing a large language model that is bigger and allowing the small language model to learn from the large language model. And indirectly, that's considered as distilled model. And from that point of view, why would you say small language model is an important industry to focus on?
So again, going back a year and a half or 2 years ago, I would say it was OpenAI and, well, I guess then Anthropic, and that was it, right? So those models are good. Sometimes they show impressive abilities. My concerns and my customers' concerns are that, well, again, those abilities may not be relevant to the problem we're trying to solve. So, nice. Oh, yeah, you did the triple backflip prompt, but, again, I'm just trying to answer customer questions at scale and in the most cost efficient way possible. So nice, but not for me. So there's this element of, there's a wow effect that doesn't necessarily translate into actual business value for real life companies. There's and I think you mentioned it, there's a privacy and a compliance element where companies operating in highly regulated industries, or even companies who are very, concerned that their data could be used for
Training.
weird purposes, or just don't want to take a chance, just don't want to take any chance with their data, are concerned with that, with sending those the data to those APIs. And it doesn't matter whose APIs we're talking about. I mean, I would be as concerned with Google APIs and OpenAI APIs or DeepSeek APIs, or if you give me an option of, hey, I'll keep all my data within my IT platform within the fortress, or I have to poke a hole in the castle walls and send some data out there into the wild, I'm always going to prefer the first option.
Yeah.
Maybe the wild people out there are friendly. Maybe they're not going to do anything weird with my data, but there's certainty that nothing happens on one side, and
Yeah.
the remote risk maybe, but still a risk that something happens on the other side. So I'll always go with the first option. So and then of course there's and we discussed it, the fact that those larger models cannot be efficiently tailored or fine-tuned. Yes, some of them have fine-tuning APIs, but there's a good paper from last November that actually tested thoroughly those APIs and concluded that they don't really work and they don't really deliver any significant adaptation. I think it's called something like "How well do commercial fine-tuning APIs work?" You'll find it. If not, you can ping me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the link.
Yep.
And so the cost, obviously, the larger models are large because they have been built with the assumption that they should be able to answer anything, right? So train on the whole internet, memorize or learn that data, and then be able to answer any question based on that. So to do that, you need lots of parameters. And lots of parameters mean larger models, and larger models mean more infrastructure to run them, right?
And more cost.
And more cost, and everybody has the same chips, so there's no magic there.
True.
So the privacy and compliance story, the lack of domain adaptation, and the cost is usually what scares or drives some enterprise customers to look for alternatives, because again, they want full privacy, they want the narrower, they have the narrower use case, and they're always cost sensitive. Like in real life, money is always a problem. Okay,
True.
and that's why those SLNs are I've seen a lot of traction in the last year and a half, I guess. And originally, I had a lot of conversations where I was talking about, Llama and Mistral, etc. And customers would tell me, yeah, okay, we can do those things, but okay, we still see much better results with the larger models, right? So Mistral 7B or Llama 3.8B versus GPT-4, yeah, very good for XYZ, but the bigger model still does better. And so, we're not convinced. I think now, in the last, last year, we're seeing models that are small yet amazingly good. Right. So you see models like, the Qwen 2, Qwen 2.5 models coming from Alibaba and their variants. Well, obviously DeepSeek is larger, but interesting as well. Whatever Llama comes out next will be certainly very impressive, et cetera, et cetera. And then, so those are the base models that companies like RC take and apply, some of our secret sauce to, and make them even better, right?
Yeah.
So every time we take a model like, Llama or Mistral or Qwen and apply a combination of, distillation and model merging and et cetera, and some other techniques, we just, we deliver even better models. Actually, the models, yesterday, we released a model based on, it's a Mistral 24B model that we, again, improved through a number of techniques. And it's, I have to say, it is massively better than the original Mistral at the same size, right? And you can look at the benchmarks in the blog post. And so we do the same with Qwen. We do the same with other architectures. So the joint effect of models getting smaller and smaller, yet better and better, is fascinating. A couple of weeks ago, we released a 10 billion parameter model, which is called Virtuoso Lite. It is actually on Hugging Face. So a lot of our models are still open source, by the way. You can find them on Hugging Face. Some of them are commercial, the larger ones, but a lot of them are still free. So Virtuoso Lite is a 10 billion model, and this model outperforms our own 72B model from, I think, last July.
Wow.
Okay, so that model was called Nova. So Nova, when we released it, was the best 72B open source models. Okay, it outperformed, Llama 3.1, it outperformed Qwen 2, et cetera, et cetera. So now we have one that is over 7 times smaller and yet better.
Wow.
And so, immediately you can understand the benefits, because that means that 10 billion model can run on the tiniest GPU instance on AWS.
Yeah,
which is something like $1 an hour on demand price. So it's cost effective. It also means that even in AWS regions, and I say AWS because that's what I know best. But I'm sure it's the same for Google Cloud or Azure or other clouds, right? It means that if your cloud region doesn't have the latest and greatest GPU instances, right?
Yeah.
So for AWS, you don't have the P4s, you don't have the P5s, and I'm pretty sure that's still the situation in the South Africa region. If you have the previous generation of smaller GPUs, you can still run state-of-the-art models, right? So that's, to me, it's about cost efficiency. It's about bringing those models to everybody, right? Even if they cannot get their hands on the latest and greatest and most expensive GPUs. And going one step further, you can even run them on CPU. And I'm a huge fan of CPU inference for SLMs. I have a few videos on that stuff on my YouTube channel, because thanks to projects like Llama CPP, or the MLX project for Apple hardware, you can optimize, you can shrink, quantize the models to from 16-bit parameters to 8-bit or maybe even 4-bit, and still keeping most of the model quality, and run it on CPU. So you can run it on your laptop, you can run it on an industrial PC running somewhere in a warehouse, or maybe even underground. Utility companies have a lot of equipment that is completely remote, some maybe even underground. So good luck with cloud connections, and good luck with the GPUs in the bunker. No way. The best you'll have is a CPU server, and yet you would still see benefits in running a Gen AI there. Maybe predictive maintenance. I don't know, something like that.
Sure.
Report generation. So that's the thing, right? If we keep riding that double wave of models getting smaller, models getting better, and so cost performance, booming. Honestly, the level of ROI you can get these days with a small model is absolutely stunning, and that's even before you looked at fine tuning and customizing it for particular use cases. So that's why everybody's so excited about models. You can run them everywhere, and cost performance is great, and you don't have to compromise on the quality of the generation or the reasoning, right? One of the models we released yesterday is a 7B model. It's a reasoning model. I'm actually shooting the YouTube video right after I'm done talking with you. So by the time your viewers watch this, they'll be able to see it.
Watch that.
And it's a 7B model that reasons like you wouldn't believe, and it actually on math benchmarks. We're still testing it, but on math benchmarks, it's outperforming O1 preview.
Wow.
7 billion. So
wow.
This year is going to see some crazy breakthroughs. And that's because of the OSLM ecosystem.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. Because one thing that you just mentioned right now, reasoning is probably one of the biggest areas where AI models really would benefit. And when it comes to it, actually enhances AI agents, agentic AI, as we all see as that's the probably most important thing. So coming to reasoning, so it could be chain of thoughts, but one thing that was fascinating was, when you look at the DeepSeek R1, you kind of see exactly how it thinks, and it kind of gives you a good idea of the prompt that was used in towards it making those particular steps. So what technique would you advise? And I'm not saying that you should share all your secrets, but overall, in terms of enhancing the agentic AI model, as well as having some form of prompt that assists in terms of getting the right reasoning in terms of formulating a task to fulfill. A difficult task.
So I think it's again, you have to come back to the original question of what am I trying to do here? If you look at the the Microsoft Phi models, Phi 3, Phi 4, etc., they were trained, obviously in a very clever way, but a lot of the goodness comes from the fact that they've been trained on textbooks, right? So the original data is textbooks, and we've all read textbooks, school books, university books. There's a certain way to present, step by step and explain step by step. If you look at math, math is, okay, first do this, prove this, then, okay, prove that, then using this theorem, we know that blah, blah, blah. So we can use this and move on to the next step. So the fact that the data is structured that way is obviously going to be learned by the model, right? So the quality of the data here is critical. So it could come from textbooks, and obviously a model that has been trained that way can be prompted in a way that you could say, okay, explain blah blah blah, or analyze this piece of code, and and write a step-by-step explanation of the code, and then suggest improvements, and then right. So I think that you have to. The way I do it is really I try to do it very naturally, in the sense that I want to interact with the model like I would interact with you, right? So let's say you're the expert in this particular application or piece of code, etc., and I need to understand it. I would ask. I'm not sure which question I want to ask, but I know how I would like you to answer it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hey, Nwako, you wrote this a year ago. I can't wrap my hand around it, and I'm not an expert in whatever this piece of code does. Can you explain it to me step by step? Can you highlight the critical parts that I should really understand? Blah blah blah. And I think if you that's why I wouldn't call that prompt engineering, and I really have a very, very strong dislike for the so-called prompt engineering techniques, because I feel they're very artificial. And I think a great model should just understand what I'm after, and that means having been trained on data that I would find very relevant, right? So if I would have read this physics textbook, right, or this C++ textbook, and you trained on that, right? Well, then figure out the answer. And human preference and human alignment is what makes those models great. I think DeepSeek, the key thing in DeepSeek is really the reinforcement learning techniques they applied, right? And because it's not only compute efficient, which is important because you don't have billions to spend, but it also works very well and aligns very well. So at the end of the day, I think if you're asking me, what AI really means these days, I think it is about writing those super high quality data sets, not just training, on billions of Reddit pages or, social feeds, or which are low quality crap, excuse my French, and in fact, a lot of companies are just filtering that stuff because it's so toxic and hateful sometimes that the last thing you want is that stuff to be in your models.
Yeah.
But if you have high quality data, and then you create more synthetic data based on that to even further diversify, and if you can distill bigger models and say, okay, now these are the questions that I have, and write your step-by-step answer, and write your this is the high school level answer, this is the undergrad level answer, this is the PhD level answer, etc., etc., then I think you're on your way to building amazing models. Let's not forget, most of the time those models are meant for humans. Okay.
Yeah.
And no two humans will ask the same question in the same way. No two humans have the same education or fine-grained understanding of the same problem. Plus, hey, there are infinite nuances in questions and answers, right?
Yeah.
So the models need to pick that stuff, and I think they need to pick it through training on the best possible data, augmented with again synthetic data, augmented with the distilled data, and then carefully aligned through clever reinforcement learning algorithms. I think that's it. If you ask me, I think that's what DeepSeek did best.
Nice. Yeah, because one thing you just mentioned, just gives me a bit of memory in terms of, when you train a model, we get to understand that the data that OpenAI, for a good example, I'll just use this use case where they train model with the internet, and when DeepSeek came along, OpenAI was blaming DeepSeek for the fact that they use their data, but in the same time, that data that they use was not available for them to use in the first place.
What goes around comes around.
Fair enough. And now we look at Grok. He also mentioned the fact that a lot of social media basically use Grok 3. I think that's one of the hot topics of today's latest AI trend. But one thing that makes me, I don't know, when it comes to benchmark, it kind of feels like companies or individuals tend to like cherry pick which benchmark they want to compare, or they leave out certain models so that their model looks compelling or better than the rest in that case. So what advice what would you say, what is the issue within the industry, especially coming to a point of how do we have a standardized benchmark? And I know that when it comes to the actual leaderboard or community where they evaluate, it looks like at the current state, Grok 3 seems to be the popular one, I believe from its deep research capability, and many others are also using it as a key component. But what would make it better? Would you say the data in terms of, we see Google having its own, I guess they have their own exclusive deal with Reddit, where they can use data within Reddit for training purposes. What is your idea around data itself? I mean, we can talk about privacy, but the data itself from training, and you just mentioned the fact that you don't want to use social media because now you're letting the model to have some form of biases, hate. And I think that's something that, I mean, Grok 3, I think he wanted to have it to a point that it's unfiltered. It can say whatever it says. I don't know if it's freedom of speech or just...
Yeah. It's just another angle. And, I don't want to get political at all. I
Yes.
think politics need to stay out of AI, but that's a lost cause, but let's at least try. And I mean, Elon Musk, he has his own understanding of freedom of speech, and he wants an unfiltered model. And I saw a funny tweet, I think yesterday. Somebody asked, who's the biggest racist on Twitter? Just give me the name, and the model answered Elon Musk. So I don't know if it's fake or not. I need to try it. So there you go. I think it's, and I wouldn't, I'm not saying he's racist or not racist. I mean, I honestly don't care. But I found, it's like, okay, if you want to go with unlimited freedom of speech, then somebody should be able to call you the biggest racist on Twitter, right? And even the model you built, and I don't think he would disagree with that. If he's consistent, he would say, well, yeah, I mean, that's, I disagree with the fact that I'm a racist, but okay, if the model thinks I am, then whatever. You have to live by the sword and die by the sword, so to speak, right?
Yeah, true.
Now, how the problem I have with filtering and alignment and guardrails is who's in charge, right? Who are the keepers, and who watches them?
Yeah.
Who watches them? And we saw funny, in a way, funny examples of aligned models going completely wrong, right? The original Gemini model had an interesting take on some parts of European history, and I'm not going to elaborate because I do not want to offend anyone here. It's really, I mean, it's not who I am, and I travel enough to respect cultures and people everywhere, but. Vikings looked a certain way, and Nazis looked a certain way. I live in France. We know about them, right?
True.
We saw them firsthand, and well, they didn't look exactly like what Gemini said. So anyway, and I think it's funny or annoying depending how you look at it, but. The bigger problem is, why did this happen? And it happened because people who were building the model were aligning it to certain views, right? And I'm not the one to judge. And it's fair to say, if anything, that their views were leaning in a certain direction, and they certainly went too far in that direction. And so, well, the model, the model is just doing what it's told. So if you're leaning in and aligning the model in certain direction, then it doesn't have worldviews. It doesn't have a deep understanding of world history. Those things are generating text or images. They're multiplying matrices. I'm sorry to break the dream, but there is no reasoning. there's the illusion of reasoning. So,
Yeah.
you know, and so you generate, incorrect text or incorrect images, and they're convincing and they're still incorrect. So where's the balance between, zero filtering and having models that can sing the praises of, ugly characters and say very, offensive things, versus models that are, maybe with the best intentions, aligned in the wrong way. So it's a philosophical question, in a way. It is literally the same question as freedom of speech or freedom of press. What can you write, what can you not write? And in the US they have the First Amendment, but in my country, certain views are not allowed by law, and you can actually go to prison if you say some certain things, right? And to Americans, this would be unbelievable, just like for us. Seeing sometimes people marching with certain flags in the streets of certain cities in the US is a little confusing, to say the least, right? So it's not an AI problem. It's a world problem, And looking at this in a different angle, I traveled to Dubai, I traveled to Singapore, and I sat down with officials who literally, funny enough, in Singapore and Dubai, told me the same thing and said, "Hey, ask about our country, ask a direct question about our country or the state of democracy in our country to ChatGPT, read the answer, and ask yourself if we're happy with the answer." And it would be very easy to take, the liberal Western view and say, well, yeah, those countries' regimes are a little weird, right? And we wouldn't call them modern Western democracies, right?
Yeah.
But guess what? They're not Western countries. Okay, so their country, their rules. If you're working for the Singapore Ministry of Education and you put a chatbot in front of your students, your responsibility is to make sure that whatever the chatbot says is aligned to how generally the Singapore people want to raise their kids. Same in Dubai, same elsewhere. You could say it's not right, but hey, great, because you're not living there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think all those issues are really, really complex. And coming back to technical discussions, I think there's a strong reason why we do need local models. We do need models trained by local organizations. Because in Singapore or in Indonesia or in Dubai, or I guess in Africa, because language support is a problem, right?
That's
No one else but local actors will best know about the culture, about their history, about the sensitivity on certain issues, and of course about the language. I know nothing about African languages. I just know there are so many of them. And yes, and of course you have official languages in each country, but then you have other languages that are used every day. And if you want to build, AI applications or digital services for the greater number, well, you have to account for that. Indonesia, when I was over there, I was talking about the Indonesian language, and they were kind of smiling, politely, and I'm like, okay, I said something stupid there, and I said, okay, did I say something stupid? And they said, no, it's okay, but you say Indonesian, but we actually have 100 dialects. Some of them are just spoken languages, spoken dialects. There's no written content. So how do you deal with that, right? If you want to build an app for the widest number of people over there, maybe you don't need to support the 100 languages, but you need a good number. And where are the data sets and who trains model? And I can tell you, OpenAI and the other guys, they're not interested, right? No offense to them, they're not interested. And the same, India is kind of complicated too. It's a big country. The world is complicated, and I keep telling that everyone, if you put your faith into U.S. West Coast people, well, chances are, most of them cannot even put your country on the map.
That's true.
So, and that's the way they are, I like them. I work with them, but
Definitely.
I know for a fact, France is even probably already a challenge for them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Indonesia or Nigeria or South Africa is easy. It's all the way down, but even that, I'm
Yeah.
not so sure. So, but yes, so that's the thing. That's why we need local actors. That's why we need local models. That's why we need that kind of diversity. That's very, very important. And so once you own that, then yes, you can collect the data sets. You can work with the local organizations, the local governments, the local users, the local open source community.
Yes.
And then take the great models that are available on Hugging Face and start fine tuning them. And that's, a lot of those initiatives are happening these days, and that's great. We need decentralization. We don't need just a couple of huge models that work well on the top 10 languages and nothing else. That's a problem.
Yeah. So I know we have I have one last question for you.
Sure.
But before we go to that question, I just wanted to add to that, like the fact that you just mentioned that a lot of nations have to take responsibility with their own AI model. It is true. And I see even when it comes to EU, there's a commitment of the 200 billion that they want to invest. And it's nice to see that it's not just based on building infrastructure, but also getting talent and allowing the talent that are from there to also have the resource they need to carry on building. What advice would you give, especially looking at, because when I look into Africa, we essentially there's a lot of scarcity in terms of many things, but when you're coming from data scientists, AI engineers, machine learning, that's probably one of the field that as Jungs AI, we're trying to get to a point that we see that there's already knowledge out there and anyone can get the knowledge, but the hard part is getting the resources to start developing. What advice would you give, especially coming from a government point of view, and you're now looking towards the rest of the world who are behind lagging to not really compete, but to have models that work for them?
So I think you have to you have to join forces, and because again, and please correct me if I say anything stupid, but I think in Africa, the geographical boundaries and the linguistic boundaries are not the same, right?
True.
So you have languages that are spoken across different countries, and so why would Senegal try to build their own LLM, and why would Kenya try to build another one, and why would I don't know, Nigeria do the same? Come on, you have the borders are the borders, but the languages are more and the cultures are more complicated and more intricate than that. So Europe is trying finally to do something. Let's see. It's late. I'm skeptical about the bureaucracy, but okay, let's see what they can pull off. And I think Africa needs to do the same. Like take the matter into your own hands. So university, research labs, open source communities. There is a very strong open source community in Africa. Okay, start building bridges. Okay, start building bridges. Don't wait for governments to do what they should be doing. I don't know much about African governments, but governments are governments. They're usually slow and late and okay. But collaboration, and use the open source community, use the enthusiasm, use students, right? Africa is a young continent, so people are studying, people are learning, they have a ton of energy. They want to improve their own future and their country's future. So you need local champions to just start, waving your own flag and building your own ecosystems and leveraging, open source, etc. And then when I was in South Africa, I mean, I was speaking with the AWS folks over there, and they have programs, right? So you don't be shy. You need to. All you need is just a small group of lab or university researchers, a small group of startups that start collaborating, and you need nobody to do that, right? Just you.
Yeah.
Just put yourself in a room and start building stuff, right? And then start reaching out to the local tech companies. AWS has programs to support startups, to support Gen AI innovation. Everybody, it's the top priority for everybody, right?
Yes. Sure.
Talk to Google, talk to Microsoft, talk to AWS. Get cloud credits. Get things going and leverage open source as much as you can. It's all in your hands. It's all in your hands, and it's. I know it's not easy to get those projects off the ground, but get started, right? Identify your local champions in terms of academics and startups and just open source community members. Put them in a room, a virtual room if it has to be, and just get going. And start small, baby steps, and get more awareness, get more adoption.
Yes.
At some point, somebody will notice, and maybe governance and start funding, etc., etc. But all those initiatives are local and community driven, and you need to get that thing off the ground. So it's all in your hands, my friends.
Yes, no, I totally agree.
And if you have initiatives that you want me to promote, I'm happy to promote them. So just shoot me an email or ping me on LinkedIn about, hey, we have this cool meetup in I don't know, anywhere in Africa, and and blah blah blah, and they look for sponsors. I mean, that's how you do it. It's all in your hands. That's all I can say. If you're not going to do it, the West Coast people are not going to do it for you. Trust me.
I agree. No, totally. I definitely agree. And I really thank you for this time. And one thing I've also picked up that you love, Harley Davidson.
It's my T-shirt for the day. I just don't have enough time to ride. That's the story.
I see.
I'm spending too much time in front of the webcam or traveling. But yeah, I love motorcycles. That's for sure. Maybe when I retire, I will have more time. But
I'll post a picture right here that I created, and in that image it had Harley Davidson.
All right, that's
yeah. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Marco. It's been a pleasure.
A privilege, yeah. Honestly, a privilege hearing from you. And honestly, I would love to have this even longer, but unfortunately, had this slot of time. And definitely, I will definitely communicate with you. We are on our infancy stage in terms of developing an AI machine learning hackathon, just to let you know. And we are getting a bit of support. As mentioned, we are engaging with startups. And we'll need to also get cloud providers to support us. Either
if you have I'm sorry, hackathons are a good option.
Yeah.
Reach out to Hugging Face. Reach out to the cloud people. They have those credits. They're it's pocket money literally for them, and they're and if you need contacts over there, let me know. Specifically AWS, I think I can help. I can help you connect. But it's how you do it. It's how you do it.
Sure.
In some cases, they may be able to help you with the venue and everything. Like you have to use guerrilla tactics.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
I hope you have a fantastic day and all the best of your recording. And I'll try to push this before you publish your new video.
Oh, let's see. Okay, well, maybe you'll beat you to it. But yeah, the more content, the better.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a great day. Bye.